Good afternoon, everyone. This is Sarah Hollister at Achieving the Dream. Welcome to the Leader College webinar, Review of Technology. I'm looking at what you should be looking at, and I'm not sure if you can actually see it. So what you should be seeing is a slide that says using GoToWebinar. And I'm going to ask you to raise your hand if you can see that slide. There's a little hand on your dashboard. You can just go ahead and let me know if you see that slide or not. Yeah, I don't think it's showing up there, so obviously we're having a bit of technical difficulties here. So hold on one sec. We're just trying to make sure that this PowerPoint will work. So just hold with us 1 second. We're just going to rectify this problem, and then we'll get back to you. Hold on. We'll continue the broadcast in a second. Okay, thanks for your patience, everyone. We're unfortunately in a different setup today because our conference room is being used by another group. So hopefully now you should be able to see the slide with the control panel showing. If you can go ahead and raise your hand to let me know if you can see that slide, that would be great. All right, I see some hands raised. Perfect. Okay, it looks like everyone can see the slide now. So great, thank you for that. You have all just done one of the tasks that I was going to ask you to do when I described the control panel. That's raising the hand. And that is another way that you can go ahead and ask a question later on in the presentation if you have a question. There's also the question pane that you can go ahead and use if you have a question about the presentation, and we can read your question and answer it during the presentation. You can also use the different panes that are in that control tab to either chat or also see which one of your colleagues are on the webinar. If you have any technical difficulties during the webinar, whether it be with the presentation or with listening, so there's the audio as well as the visual, just feel free to log off and then log back on And when you log back on with the audio, you will want to make sure that you're entering the audio pin that is being given to you. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and start the webinar. So welcome officially, everyone, to the Achieving the Dream Leader College webinar. These are monthly webinars that we do for our leader colleges. And the topic this week, this month, is massive online open courses, or MOOCs. So I think we'll have a great discussion, and we have some great presenters for you today. Before I get started, I do want to apologize in advance. I think some of you were on when I said we're in a different room today. And some of you may know that our Achieving the Dream offices are right outside of the Silver Spring Metro Station in Silver Spring, Maryland. So there is a chance that you might hear a train going by, and I just want you to know that that's normal. Unfortunately, because we were not able to get the conference room today, we might have a train every now and then. But I apologize in advance for that, and hopefully it won't be too distracting. So on the call today, we have myself, Sarah Hollister, as well as Meredith Hatch, and our new programs coordinator, Melanie Mulvey. We're very excited to have Melanie on board with us. The agenda for the call is pretty straightforward. We'll do leading by example, Achieving the Dream Business, and then go straight into our presentation. So for leading by example today, I just wanted to thank all of our Achieving the Dream leader colleges that participated in the Texas Peer Coaching Initiative. We had a great meeting with this group last week in Texas, in the Woodlands, hosted by Lone Star College. And we discussed the key ingredients of college peer learning networks. So, and we'll be synthesizing all of the information we gained from this project, and it will be shared with our network later this fall. I wanted to thank you all who submitted DREAM proposals as well. We really rely a lot on our leader colleges to share the good work that they're doing at DREAM, and I know that a lot of you submitted proposals, and we thank you for that. If anyone is also interested in volunteering to review proposals, please feel free to email me and let me know. This is a great way to learn about what the innovations and strategies are for community colleges throughout our network. We have a few items of business here for Achieving the Dream Business. One is to let you know that we have a new funding opportunity, state policy work, that will be released shortly. Wanted to give you a heads up about that. Through the support of the Helmsley Foundation, Achieving the Dream, and Jobs for the Future, we'll be partnering to provide policy support to 3 to 4 community college-led regional collaboratives from the Post-Secondary State Policy Network. The focus of this work will be to better align college completion and middle skill STEM policy agendas. So please watch for an announcement about the RFP for this opportunity in late October. Another learning opportunity that we wanted to make sure you were aware of is the Working Families Success Network meeting. Many of you may be familiar with the Working Families Success Network, which was formerly known as the Center for Working Families. The Working Families Success Network promotes an integrated services approach to help nonprofits and community colleges better serve low-income families. And this approach has been proven to be very effective in community college student retention. The network will have its national conference on November 7th to 8th in Detroit, Michigan. And this is a really great opportunity to learn more about the basics of this integrated service strategy. you're thinking about attending or have any questions about the conference or the WFSN Integrated Service Strategy, please feel free to contact Julian Haynes, Associate Director of Programs here at Achieving the Dream, and his email is on the slide. Another learning event opportunity we want to make sure you're aware of, you may have seen the email from Carol Lincoln about it, but there is the Close It Summit, which is going to be held November 5th through 7th in Washington, D.C. So Close It is a leadership summit bringing together diverse stakeholders that are actively engaged in creating new talent pathways to close the skills gap and bridge the opportunity divide. Achieving the Dream CEO, William Trueheart, will be presenting at this conference, and there is a discount for Achieving the Dream network colleges. So with that, I want to move into introducing our panelists for the day. From Bunker Hill Community College, Jamie LaRue and Jefferson Fernandez. And from Cuyahoga, we have Belinda Miles and Sasha Thackaberry. Both Bunker Hill and Cuyahoga Community College have had experience in designing and implementing MOOCs at their colleges. So we're very excited to hear about their experience and be able to ask them questions as well. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Bunker Hill Community College. Jamie, Jefferson, are you there?
Yep. We are. Thank you. We want to welcome everybody to the webinar as well and give you a little information about the project to put in context an opportunity for discussion a bit later on. Our project in particular was working under a Gates Foundation grant in conjunction with edX. So it was an edX MITx course that was originally offered for students at MIT and currently is still offered in that format, but is also offered through edX's MOOC. The course is called 600X, and it is the title of the course is Introduction to Computer Science and Programming Using Python. What we did under the grant was we were looking to implement a hybrid model at the community college level. There were 2 community colleges involved. Bunker Hill was one of the community colleges, and the second was Mass Bay Community College, which are both in Massachusetts and locally located near MIT and edX, which made for a lot of opportunities to meet in person. And the course that we offered was provided under edX's content, the MITx content, that was presented in video formats as well as finger exercises with some assessments online as well. They were interested in us presenting the MOOC in a hybrid format, so the online content came from them, and the in-class presentation or adaption came from Jefferson and I, and the students met in class for a total of 2.5 hours a week. They were also interested in a flipped classroom model, so obviously the content that they watched online was essentially their lecture. So what we did in class was to provide opportunities for project-based learning and peer learning. Can you flip to the next slide? Thank you. So in our particular implementation, we did something slightly different than Mass Bay. Mass Bay offered their implementation with just one faculty member. Jefferson and I co-taught the class, and Jefferson is a programmer and computer scientist by training, whereas my background tends to be more in information technology, but I have done a lot of pedagogy and work around project-based learning and flipped classroom models. So our 2 expertise kind of melded well for this particular project. The students in this course were generally not computer science students. We only, I think, had 1 computer science student. And they were not students that had necessarily had programming formally before. They may be students that did know some programming, but many of them were self-taught. And the majors for our students varied from game design to information technology to math and engineering and networking. We set a math prerequisite for this course as just college level math, so the students needed to be in a college level math course. We wanted to set that the same as we do in our IT department, and that presented a few challenges that we can talk about a bit later on or answer some questions about. The course was enrolled, most community colleges, or at least our community college, I should say, most in Massachusetts, have fairly small classroom sizes. It is dictated by the size of the room and the number of computers in it frequently. And so our class was 19 students. We had a significant drop-off at a midterm down to about 11 students. 11 students took the midterm, and we finished the semester with 10 students that completed the course, and all of those individuals earned a B- or better. The 9 remaining students either withdrew or ended up failing the course. We did not present the entire course as offered by edX. Their course materials are actually significantly longer. We felt, and we were asked by edX to adapt the content to what was appropriate for our community college students. And in our adaptation, we decided that we needed to slow the pacing down of the course to be more appropriate for those students. We also used some other techniques to adapt the course for our students, including some peer learning and in-class group projects, and also surveys to help assess whether the students were learning the content that they were supposed to be learning online. As a result, about 85% of the students' grade was based on the MITx content. It was very true to the original course materials. They were truly taking an MIT course, but at a slower pace. The remaining amount had to do with projects that we did in class, and that was pretty much it.
Next slide.
Next slide. So this is just a little bit more background on Bunker Hill, which is probably useful to understand the particular students that we were modifying this course for, or adapting the course. As I said, we are a 2-year community college. We are located in Charlestown, Massachusetts, which is in Boston. It's a very urban campus and a 100% commuter campus. We have a large number of associate's degrees and other offerings. We have many IT programs. We have one of the larger computer science or IT departments of all the community colleges in Massachusetts. We now enroll over 14,000 students, which has doubled in the last 5 years. And a large percentage, as you can see on the screen, of our students are minorities, as well as we have 800 international students that are from 100 countries that speak approximately 90, I believe it is, different languages. So we have quite a diverse community. One other note is that we also have quite a large population, as do my understanding from many community colleges, of students that do not enter ready for college-level math or college-level reading or writing. And as a result, that was a particular challenge to this MITx course, and we can get into more details about that later. Thank you.
Thanks, Jamie. This is Sarah here. I just have a quick question. So is it correct that you've only gone through one cycle of this course?
So last spring was the first time that we offered this course, and we were doing the research project. This fall, we were offering the course again, virtually identical. However, we're not continuing the research with this particular group. It's been a nice opportunity, though, because there's been somewhat less visitors in our classroom. So we've been able to focus more on learning and teaching, but we've also been able to capitalize on what we learned from our last semester.
And have you found that your enrollment is bigger in this semester?
No, it's actually a smaller enrollment. I think we have 12 students instead of 19. But so far, and we're not quite to midterm yet, obviously, but so far we've retained all of them.
Great. Okay, great. Well, with that, I think let's turn it over to Cuyahoga before we dive into more questions.
Thank you. Good afternoon. This is Belinda Miles, and I'm here with Sasha Thackerberry.
Hello.
And Dr. Sandy Robinson, who's our Vice President of Academic Affairs. We're happy to talk with you about our MOOC experience, also a Gates-funded initiative that we were very pleased to become aware of late last fall and then receive funding for in the spring. And we were just chuckling looking at our first slide, ex-MOOC, which describes the experience. You can move on to the next slide. That describes it as using traditional components. And MOOCs are just a couple of years old, but already we're focused on the traditional components of self-paced learning, but in a highly structured experience. We're hearing a lot about competency-based learning, and we like the idea of having students be able to demonstrate mastery of a particular level at 80% or higher in order to move through the various levels within a gamified atmosphere. As they move through those achievements, they're able to qualify for virtual badges, which reinforces their learning. And we were able to identify a resource that helped us to facilitate their badge attainment. But the game mechanics was something that we felt was familiar to many of our students who are using gaming technology just in their normal recreational experiences. But it also was something that we knew that from the kinds of behaviors in gaming research that students persist through a level. They're aiming to get to that next level. And if we could transfer that type of persistence to an academic experience with the motivation of achieving the next level, then there are some things that we know from educational psychology that tell us that that's going to increase their time on task, their focus, as they're moving toward that mastery. So those were a couple of the content items that we felt were important to include. Sasha?
This MOOC was at a pre-algebra level, so for our the translation for our environment is that it's actually our lowest level of developmental education in math, so it corresponds with our 0910 course. And one of the additional things that we're really doing is grabbing a whole bunch of metrics on the students. The MOOC has run 4 times, and it's now open on course site, so anyone can go and take it, but it's no longer facilitated. But we grabbed everything from demographic data and satisfaction data, and obviously achievement data, to we have a record of every single click students made in the course. So we'll be able to see when we lost students, where we lost students, and hopefully why we lost students. And again, that game environment really provides a low-risk failure for students. So instead of seeing a D or seeing an F on a test and really, incorporating that into how they feel about mathematics, we're providing them with this environment where they have infinite chances for success. So if they, at first they don't succeed, really try again. And I think the results that we had were indicative of that being a little bit of different. And again, it was an ex-MOOC, so it was highly structured. It wasn't constructivist. It wasn't task-based. It was really that traditional, again, we're laughing over here, traditional MOOC, a traditional MOOC. If you can proceed to the next slide, please.
So one other comment is that we did structure this, this MOOC experience to be somewhat of a pre-test intervention through the competency levels and then post-test relative to seeking to achieve higher scores on the Compass exam rather than accepting students and awarding credit for that pre-algebra course. So our expectation was that we would have some of the population that would be part of the massive users, and we'll talk in a moment about the enrollments that we achieved, but we were hoping that we would have some local users that would have had an experience with our Compass test score, experience the MOOC, and then work a little higher. And we'll talk about them in a minute. But let's talk a little bit about how we built this in some of the community that was engaged.
So this was a very quick process from beginning to implementation. So we found out, we initially found out, I actually went back in the emails and checked, and the day in which we found these was in September, I believe it was September 18th was the first email that I got on it, and we submitted the proposal
about a week and a couple days later. So we really moved on this one. And the interesting thing about this proposal too was it wasn't just a grant proposal, it was a demo. They wanted a video for almost a proof of concept. So we had to really put together, that was when we put together the concept of game mechanics and when we put together the concept of badges and leveling. So all of that was kind of in the creative juices at the beginning of the project. And then in October, at the end of October, we found out that we got the grant. And in December, we identified faculty kind of throughout November. And then we had the initial meeting with faculty in December and brainstormed, within the constraints of the grant, what did we want to do with that. Design and development started in January. And if you can see those blue arrows on the screen, that was the entire design and development cycle, which was very rapid development. And so we used it kind of as almost a continuous improvement opportunity. We knew we wanted to run the course live multiple times. So it first went live March 4th, and then we had 4 sections of it. So it went live March, April, May, and June. And between March and April, we made some changes. April and May, some changes, and some changes also in the data we were collecting.
I just want to add that what helped us to leverage the ability to pull this together so quickly is that as part of our strategic academic planning, we were looking at ways to better engage students, and gamification is something that was very much on our agenda. We had some early adopters as we've been looking at wraparound services for students. We had some faculty that were working on supplemental materials and had been building content in a technology-based format, looking at the self-motivated learners or just resources that could be available. So we were able to incorporate many existing components and bring both early adopters together to pull together this concept.
And that brings up a good point, too, which is in terms of the content, nothing was ready-made from scratch. What we did was actually pull in open educational resources that were existing from other providers. So the work that our faculty did with our design team was really focused on vetting resources, searching for resources, aligning those resources with our specific learning objectives, vetting those resources. In some cases, we used videos from TeacherTube and Khan Academy that had not yet been captioned. And because we're very mindful of online accessibility, we had those closed captions in order to include them in the course. The course was also submitted for Quality Matters recognition and was the first MOOC that achieved recognition through Quality Matters. Go ahead and move to the next slide, please.
So just to share with you, we just celebrated our 50th birthday this year as Ohio's oldest and largest community college, 52,000 credit and non-credit students individually across 4 campuses, many courses, lots of distance learning opportunities, very pleased to have lots of relevant programs and certificates. Most of our students are female, and many, many of our students are part-time. About 65% of them end up part-time. So we are looking at interesting ways to engage them and keep them engaged and keep them on this path and this track towards student success. The MOOC data was really exciting. We ended up in the 4 sections having more than 1,300 students enrolled. And Sasha, I'll let you talk about the difference between enrolled and participated and completed.
And this was interesting with the data that the Gates Foundation wanted as well, is that they wanted success and completion data. So they wanted to know how many folks completed, and then of those, how many folks were successful. Well, our completion rate was our success rate, and our success rate was our completion rate, because it was you had to complete at 80% or better. You couldn't complete if you didn't achieve 80% or better. So our success metrics were our completion metrics. And that's about double the national average. And 809 is the number of students that actually were able to access the content. So we're pretty pleased with those results, and we think it's at least worth looking at as a model.
We're pleased to answer any questions you have, being mindful of time, and we can do that either in this session or after if you have additional comments or questions.
Great, thank you. And we do have quite a bit. We have a good 10, 15 minute, well, 10 minutes for questions. But one thing I would like to perhaps have both colleges comment on briefly is, why this format? Why the MOOC for your specific goals? So obviously you used the MOOC in different ways, and so why was it that you thought that a MOOC would be the best tool to achieve your student success goals for your various objectives?
This is Cuyahoga, and we had been we had success with the social media grant opportunity that came out several years ago, and we were able to see significant student engagement. That particular grant was linked to SESI engagement variables that gave us some insight to student behavior and student comfort levels with technology. We had also launched our Tri-C mobile app around that time. So we were looking at a number of in-house experts that told us that we had users that were on board. Our faculty had begun to incorporate some gaming exercises in some of their classrooms. So we're also a League of Innovation college. We like to try to be next generation, thinking about what's on the edge as we're engaging our learners who are bringing their own devices and just being a part of that vocabulary. So the MOOC seemed like a natural extension and just a wonderful opportunity to pull together many of the things we have been doing successfully into one of the next level experiences for our learners.
Bunker Hill?
This is Jamie from Bunker Hill. So the question is a little bit backwards for us. We didn't actually go out pursuing this opportunity. It kind of came to us from edX. edX had applied for the grant and had received it, and they intended to work with 2 community colleges in Massachusetts, but had not, I don't think, selected those community colleges. So they actually approached us about this. But to what was said a few moments ago, we as an IT department at Bunker Hill do have quite a large amount of hybrid courses and web courses, and have a fairly good knowledge and expertise in those courses in terms of what can work online and what doesn't work as well. And I think there's a lot of data behind that as well. But we do have a lot of students who are fairly comfortable with online materials, or at least hybrid materials, and this was offered as a hybrid format. I also neglected to mention earlier, and I'm just going to throw it in there, that this course was offered for credit at Bunker Hill. So the students paid for a course at Bunker Hill Community College, and they earned 3 credits for this course. So that's a little bit different than how, and I know some questions were asked regarding credit, so I wanted to mention that.
Great. And so maybe while we're thinking about credit and retention, there are a couple questions about retention and why why they thought that perhaps your retention went down so much, Bunker Hill, and I'd love Cuyahoga to comment on their retention and also the credit piece as well, since obviously developmental ed is a bit different. So Bunker Hill, do you want to weigh in first about the retention piece and any insight into why you might have had some students stop?
Absolutely. I think there's a couple of, I'm going to try to keep this brief, but there's a couple of reasons I think that the retention was a challenge. As I said, 85% of the course was true MIT content, and there is a certain expectation of enrollment of students in MIT in terms of what SAT scores they may have gotten and what their math skills are and what their their reading and verbal skills and writing skills are. And as a result, community college students don't look like that necessarily. Not to say that they can't, but they don't necessarily look that way. And so math was quite a bit of a challenge. This course is very math heavy, and that was difficult for our students. That's one. 2, the course was designed by MIT to not require any previous programming, but it is our contention, Jefferson and I think I can speak for him in saying this, that the students that were successful, and the data supports this, edX's first implementation of this in the worldwide version, which we took the course in before we taught it, was their data supported that the successful students were students who had at least a bachelor's degree, and most of them had master's degrees. Their degrees tended to be in computer science, and they were men over 30 who also were programmers for a living. So what that says is the course works really well for folks who have an understanding of programming already, which is what we found to be the case as well. Our students who had some either math experience or programming experience were the ones who persisted the longest and did the best. The students that really didn't have a baseline in that really struggled. And so we are spending a lot more time on syntax and beginning steps or baby steps this semester around.
Great, thanks for that. Cuyahoga, do you want to talk a little bit about your retention? And perhaps while you're answering that, another question that came in is, for you in particular, was if a certain number of those students would not have just taken the DevEd course in a different format. So maybe you can talk a little bit about your retention and then kind of the, how you thought that format might have played in.
Okay. Well, one thing that it's important to know when we talk about MOOCs is that a retention rate of 10%, as absurd as it sounds, is actually pretty good by industry standards, because MOOCs cannot in any way be compared to regular online courses. MOOCs, by definition, are open, and so anyone can register for them. I've actually registered for 3 myself, none of which I've completed because I was going in to look at resources or going in to connect with other professionals. What Bunker Hill just mentioned about the demographics of a typical student who is taking a MOOC is pretty standard throughout what we've heard of in terms of data that's come out, particularly about XMOOCs over the past couple of years. These are the typical MOOC student has at least 1 or 2 degrees, is doing this for professional development. What we really did was use it as kind of a college readiness opportunity for students who maybe made it out of high school but still aren't college ready, or students who are coming back in to train for a new career. And this is a population that has historically, again historically being 3 years, not been served by MOOCs. And so we were really reaching out to a very different demographic. And so we were very pleased with the retention rates that we had. We also partnered with some high schools.
Mm-hmm. Locally, we were very focused, and we did have specific outreach with area high schools, because we've been very concerned about curriculum alignment and the high school exit criteria for having a high school credential not being aligned with college readiness standards at our institution and others. We're all familiar with that phenomenon. So we actually ended up having at least 2 high schools who used their study halls with a facilitated experience, having a teacher there for those students to work through the MOOCs. So that would be very similar to Math Emporium style, that they're working through the content, competency-based, with some support in the room. And we actually found that one of our largest clusters of participants came from one of our local high schools. And so we're still doing some data analysis to look at whether those students converted into our college students. But that was an interesting, it's something that we were very intentional in going after. You asked the question about what have the MOOC experience. Well, we've seen years of students graduating from high school and then testing into our lowest levels of DevEd. So at least it did expose them to the kind of content that would be expected as they're preparing for the college level path. And certainly if they come into us and have been placed where they tested, that would have put them on that minimum 3-semester journey of churning through DevEd courses. So we were really looking at reducing the time through DevEd courses and having an accelerated experience by using this space for college readiness and preparation.
The other thing too is that we found the data. I'm sorry. We found
I was
that.
going to say, was there a fee associated then at all with the MOOC?
No, not at all, not at all. And in fact, some of our students were able to take the Compass test, take the MOOC, come back and take the Compass test again. And we're really in the process of pulling out that data to see, where were they in the MOOC when they took it the second time, to see what the correlation is with success there. The other thing that it does is really prepare students for success in their next math course, because you can't get a C in the MOOC. You can only achieve success at 80% or better, and we know that if a student gets a C in a Dev Ed class, they're far more likely to not be successful in their next Dev Ed class. So we try to be very, very thoughtful about our intentions and about what we were doing with the design.
But for those students that then, and this goes back to the awarding credit side of the question, for those students that did successfully complete it, would Cuyahoga assume that therefore they would automatically place into college-level math? Or did they still have to take the test?
We would like to see how they might score on the post-test, but the particular level of pre-algebra that we selected would not have placed them in college level. It would have placed them in a higher level of Dev Ed. So the intent was to reduce the number of semesters that they needed to be in Dev Ed, and we simply selected the lowest level because we had a lot significant content in place to get that MOOC launched. So at best, they would test into the intermediate algebra, which is still a developmental level, but a higher level of Dev Ed, a little closer to college level.
I see. And I'm sorry, I cut you off before, Sasha. I think you were going to say something?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. Please feel free to continue to send in questions if you have them. I would like both of our colleges to perhaps talk a bit about the faculty involvement in creating these MOOCs. We had a lot of questions about how to get faculty on board and kind of interested in the development and implementation of MOOCs. So if you could both weigh in about your faculty participation, that would be wonderful.
Sure. This is Jefferson, Bunker Hill. The way we implemented, again, we just took the edX content that they provided to us, the lectures and finger exercises, Jenny mentioned. But we also build our own projects in class so they can work in teams. And it was really a pre-work to get them ready for the next session or lecture that they needed to follow into the online content. So, and they also had to write flowcharts, the pseudocode, and the actual program, and share it with everybody else in front of the class. So there was a lot of presentation and teamwork involved. In building the content was really looking up what were, we also did surveys in the beginning of every class to see where the deficiencies are, non-targeted surveys. So it's global, anonymous, to see what are the common deficiencies that we needed to focus on, and we would build the projects and enhance the projects towards those.
Great, thank you for that. Cuyahoga?
Well, we had kind of an interesting collaboration with faculty, and I have to say that the faculty we worked with were just really enthusiastic about trying a new model. These are all faculty who've been teaching developmental education for years, and they're very familiar with the challenges that students who place into Dev Ed face, and I think that was what really motivated us to have a very collaborative approach with it. Basically, the faculty didn't create content for this. So they were searching through some of the open repositories. Many of them you're probably familiar with: Merlot, Connections, Khan Academy, of course, TeacherTube. There are many repositories that contain OER out there. And what they were doing was a lot of alignment. So looking for specific learning objects that mapped directly back to the learning outcomes that we wanted to see out of 0910. And this worked really well. They vetted out a lot of resources that they didn't like, and they came to a lot of the resources that they did like. And then they worked with the developers and designers from our e-learning in order to really put that into the gamified environment. So the structure was already set, and we really used faculty as those subject matter experts. They also taught the class when it went live, though it's highly self-paced. So not a lot of intervention is needed because of, like we mentioned, the mechanics that are already incorporated into the course. So it was definitely a very collaborative approach to finding that. And then we also licensed the course as Creative Commons license, so it is currently open. So any other community college that would like to come and copy the course in its entirety is welcome to do so.
Great, thanks for that. And I just had one other quick question that came in. I guess we discussed the fees, that there's no fees associated with Cuyahoga. But with Bunker Hill, I assume there was a fee to pay for the credit, or how did that work?
So it was a regular 3-credit course, and so the students paid the same as they would pay for a 3-credit course here at Bunker Hill. And unfortunately, I don't know the exact credit amount. I do know that I think that average 3-credit courses in Bunker Hill are about, how much?
400, 450.
About $450, something like that. So it's not an incredibly expensive endeavor, because we are one of the least expensive community colleges in Massachusetts. And then they earned that credit towards their degree program or their certificate program, whatever they were enrolled in. This course obviously wasn't specific to their particular program. It was sort of an add-on, obviously. So, but it was available as an elective in many of the departments. So we were able to have the gaming department, our computer media technology department, signed on to offer this as an elective, or to give their students elective credit for this, as well as our engineering department. And then obviously the IT department, which is what we are both from, also agreed to do that. So we were able to create an avenue for students that this wasn't just, kind of a wasted 3 credits, but it would actually be useful towards their degrees or towards their certificate program. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, and was there any kind of fee that Bunker Hill or some kind of agreement? I know it was through a grant, so maybe this is a little bit different, but is there any kind of fee that you, Bunker Hill paid to MIT or in order to use the content or anything like that?
Fabulous question. Under the grant, we did not pay them anything, and they under the grant, Jefferson and I received a stipend, which was not for the teaching of the course, because that was paid for from our college. That was sort of what the college agreed to do under this grant, but that paid for our time to meet with edX and discuss how we were going to implement it, to meet with the folks from Mass Bay and discuss best practices on implementing it, since they were implementing the same course at the same time with a different cohort of students who are mainly computer science students, so it was very different. So we didn't pay anything under the grant, and this semester when we're offering it, we're not under the grant period anymore, but edX has kindly let us use the course content for free this semester.
Great. Well, thank you very much. We're almost at time. I want to do the poll very quickly just to get some feedback on the audience's view. So I'm going to go ahead and launch the evaluation poll. So if you could go ahead and rate how useful this call was to you, please go ahead and answer on the screen. Just another few seconds to get your votes in. Okay. So you can see it looks like this was a fairly successful call. If you have additional questions about this content, please feel free to go ahead and email me, and I can certainly pass those questions along to our presenters. I want to thank both Cuyahoga and Bunker Hill Community College for sharing their great work with us. This is a kind of a beyond out there in cyberspace, and it sounds like you've done some great work and have really connected it to student success. So we'll be interested to hear how this develops. The next webinar that we will be doing will be on Thursday, November 14th from 12:30 to 1:15 p.m. And this is a really important conversation that we'll be having, and you will note that it's a bit later in the month than usual. But basically, Achieving the Dream is going through a strategic planning process, and we really, really want to get Leader College input about the direction of the organization and the direction of the community college field and how we can best support you in the future. So please watch for registration for that very important discussion next month. And in the meantime, if you have any questions, the follow-up email will go out with the webinar recording and any follow-up information. And if you have any questions about that or next month's webinar, please feel free to email me. So thank you again to our panelists and our presenters, and we'll talk to you next month.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.